Good evening. Welcome to Authentic Expressions. This is me, Geklim. Today we are diving into the topic of disconnected at home, rebuilding emotional bridges. We are grateful for Laurel Ridge for sponsoring this program for the last few months. Laurel Ridge is a treatment center. The behavioral health program offers compassionate care for every stage of life. It provides personalized treatment for all populations. Their interest is to help you into your journey to wellness. There are services for children, adolescents, adults, military dependents, active duty service members, first responders. They offer inpatient services, outpatient services, substance abuse treatment, residential treatment. Call 210-491-3591 for no-cost assessment. Laurel Ridge is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Their mission is to save lives, heal families, create hope. So today's topic is disconnected at home, rebuilding emotional bridges. All right, welcome, EK. Good to see you. Glad you're here. So look forward to having more participants. So while waiting for your question, I am going to read you a quote. Good evening, Brittany. The quote says, successful long-term relationships are created through small words, small gestures, and small acts. Again, successful long-term relationships are created through small words, small gestures, and small acts. Okay, I see Brittany's question. Where do you even start rebuilding connection when communication has broken down for a long time? That's an awesome question, Brittany. And that seems to be the trend in a lot of marital relationships where the connection has lost its luster. And usually it breaks down early on in the marriage when there's a misunderstanding and couples have not taken time to go back and revisit that wound, and they're afraid that going back to open up that wound may make things fester up. So they tend to sweep it under the carpet, and over 10 years, it takes a toll on the marriage. The relationship begins to fray, and it makes it harder and harder for them to revisit that topic. And so over time, every little thing becomes a sore spot, and the resentments that's been built over the years has made it hard, will make it hard for them to have conversations. So over time, the distance becomes wider, and they get pricklier as small issues show up. So how do you start rebuilding that? It's important to go back and visit the pieces where the hurt points have occurred. So go back and talk about it. And also make a commitment to not use old tools, old weapons to walk through the dialogue. Many times couples use things like, well, you did this, you said this, and then the other person will get defensive. And in doing so, it only adds to the festering. So make a commitment to hear, to listen to hear, and not necessarily to solve it. Once heard, people tend to forgive easier, but when they're not heard, the festering builds up all over again. So make a commitment to let the person share and you hear them, and then vice versa, for you to share and for the person to hear you. And then put in time segments. Don't go on forever and ever. So make it a commitment to do a 1 hour conversation so that you can hear each other rather than have an unending conversation, because your brain can go into overload and it's overwhelming to hear all the things that have been festering up. So commit to 1 hour time frame, commit to talking about it regularly, commit to listening, not defending, commit to understanding and not explaining. Allow the person room to talk and let them unravel. Okay, Lux says a question. We often have various stages of life. We change and so do they. How does one build skills if they were never there? Or building different skills when they felt that they were good at them before? Okay, let me answer that question. There are various stages of that. So we often have various stages in life. That is so correct. And we do change, and so do other people. So how do you build skills that if they were never there? So how do you build skills when things were missing, when there were large gaps in the relationship? So you have to think about it as a slow process. Not You're not doing a sprint. You're doing a journey that allows you to first build the relationship, hear the person, be there for the person. Because many times, if you try to force a developmental stage on a relationship and you think that it should look like this, then the person feels like, it's a very mechanical process. So make it organic, make it natural, make it work for both of you. Many times when you force things, that's when it tears more. So learn to be there, learn to connect in small ways. You don't have to connect in large chunks of time. Many times people think, oh, connection is a one time process. Connection takes years. And if you've worked with blended families, step families, it takes about 5 years for a family to blend. The first year is just trying to figure out pieces. And many times people think, okay, we've known each other because of the dating years. But once you marry, you think, oh, we should cement and glue things together. The marriage is just the beginning, but it takes about 5 years for things to blend. So, in answering your question, Lux, make your efforts to connect with the person in organic process. Go out for simple things, simple walks, simple ice cream trips, simple things so that it's time to connect. And if you can, do one-on-one time, because then there are less distractions to deal with. And show an interest in the person, what they have to say. Take out judgment, take out criticism. Because I don't know if you're talking about teens or children. When you impose your values, they tend to shut down. Help them discuss what values they want to embrace. Help them talk about what they value in a friendship, what they want to see happen. It doesn't have to be in the word of a value, but what is important to them in the friendship. So be there to understand what they're struggling with, because that is part of connection. Okay, Brittany says, so if no one takes the first step to rebuild connection, what does that silence turn into over time? That's a great point. So if no one takes the first step, so everybody is kind of in this situation, Brittany. It's like a Mexican standoff. So everyone is guarded, even though they're not saying it. So they kind of stand on the sidelines and see who's going to throw in the towel first. That's a very unhealthy way to relationship. If it means a lot to you, if this relationship means a lot to you, ask for time to converse rather than wait for the person who throws in the towel. We are not doing a competition. We are doing a connection. So, if you want to connect with that person and it is important enough to you, ask to have a conversation and say what happened. Ask neutral questions. What happened? How did we stray apart? Help me understand. So ask curious questions to see where things are. So don't assume, because when you think, okay, we fell off the wagon at this point, ask the person at what point, because their point may be different. It may be earlier or it may be later. So take more time to understand what the process of how they got disconnected, and again make the initiative. Your job is to focus on building the connection rather than wait for who's going to be right, who's going to be wrong, when are they going to do this, because that is very much, there's a very childish behavior and it's also a game playing behavior. Okay, Bridget has a question. How do you make sure your communication do not turn into nagging? That's an excellent point. So in communication, you communicate to hear, to understand, to show compassion, to show empathy, to show curiosity, or do you communicate to impose your point and to beat your point across? So you have to understand what drives your communication. Is there something that you want to air when you communicate? If you do, say so, rather than wait for an opportune time. And then when they open up, then you start nagging and share things like, this never happened, this didn't happen, you didn't do this, what was wrong? So when you come with that energy, then it shuts the other person down immediately. So if you have something that is burping within you that has been brewing for a while, make it a point to ask for time to converse. If you don't, it will not happen. And also, like I said before, do not converse while you're passing in the hallway, standing in the kitchen. A conversation should be a sit down conversation. If you can, take it away from the home, meaning go someplace where you can have private time to converse. And when you're conversing, make it a point to understand that person's point. And also, if you have things you want to share, let them know these are your thoughts. Don't go back and forth and rebuttal, because that is only going to injure the relationship more. EK goes, how do you effectively communicate when you and your spouse come from different culture that conflict with your decision making? Okay, that's a pretty broad question. So let me reread it. How do you effectively communicate when both you and your spouse come from different cultures that conflict with your decision making? That's a very good question. So let me break it down again. So the different culture is one issue, and then the conflict that conflicts with your decision making. So I hear two things. So coming from a different culture, and then there is a disagreement about a decision. So it becomes a right wrong decision rather than I hear you and I understand you. So whenever you come from right wrong, that is when you have what I call the standoff. So in coupleness, before you make decisions, understand each other's point. Understand that, they are choosing to go this route because, while they may say because of whatever, there are also a lot of emotions that drive that decision. When they're rigid and firm and unbending, there are lots of emotions. I would go in to understand the emotions. So go in to repeat what you hear. So you're afraid to move forward and let our son do this because you fear that he may not be safe or whatever the situation may be. So you feel that he's not prepared. So you feel sure as to how the son may handle this. So make sure you understand their point before you do the standoff and go, we are at different points. So hear what their fears are, what their anxieties are, what their concerns are, and go, how can I help understand you more? How can I help support you more? Rather than rush to make a decision. Many times, when you make a decision and the other person does not agree, it calls for a win-lose situation. And in the next time, when you have to make a decision, then the person will hold grudges. So it's very important that you understand emotions that drive their fixatedness on an issue. Okay, Carolyn, welcome. Growing up, we never knew, taught, or saw a healthy communication and being heard. Yes, did not see healthy communication and being heard. How do partners build that foundation? So, how do partners build that foundation? So, because growing up, it was you were not heard, and you did not see healthy communication. So, think about what healthy communication looks like. It's not about solving problem. To me, communication is more about hearing the other person. You hear the other person. You understand their point. While you disagree, you may understand that. You also understand the emotions. Also, if you can take it a step further, understand the history of that emotion. Many times when people are fixated on a certain issue, their emotions have very long roots. It comes from years and years and decades of long rootedness. So go in to understand the history of all those decisions and make it a point to hear what they say rather than debate them. Because in debating, that's when they feel like they're being unheard, they're being squashed. So you want to give people the gift of being heard, the gift of being understood, the gift of compassion, because it crumbles all walls and it lowers their walls. When you're quick to respond and go, I told you so, you don't hear me. So you are also exhibiting the things that you did not get. You are also giving them the same wall building experience. So it's very important for you to think, how do you want to be heard? And it's important for you to show those same tools in your communication. All right. I think it's the CROD 999. Sometimes I feel like an outcast in my family. Being a step parent is playing a dad, but not being able to discipline my stepchildren. And usually I have to tell my spouse of their behavior, and she'll take care of it. What is your take on that? Okay, Christine. Okay. So being a step parent, okay, you're doing a good job by not disciplining your stepchild, at least not initially. Well, so I'm thinking different thoughts. So it's important to not discipline the stepchild initially. It's important in the first few years of your marriage to build a relationship with the stepchildren. Connect with them, make time to go out with them one on one. And if there are issues that really concern you, it will be important to share this with your spouse. If there are issues that you can overlook and issues that you can open up conversations with about, it will be important for you to open up conversations with the child. Help me understand your decision rather than you did this wrong. That was a bad behavior. So take out the the reactive judgment, but go help me understand what happened. So if you come from a curious place and a neutral place, people are they feel safe and they're more likely to tell you about what happened. They will tell you about the rationale for their decision. So it is important for you to be selective and not just tell your spouse about every little wrong thing, because that creates defensiveness. And then if you have children, they will also pick on your children. And that's where the back and forth begins. So in any kind of discipline, learn to understand the child's decision. Help me understand what just happened. How would you redo it again if it shows up next time? So give them a chance to explain themselves. And if they share their honest response, thank them for listening. Thank them for sharing it. And then let them know that you always appreciate when they're honest with you and that you want to listen to what they say. And if you feel like you've been quick, apologize for your mistakes of being too reactive. Okay, Crystal goes, what are some good tips for discerning whether a man is emotionally whole and healthy? That's a great question. Emotionally whole and healthy. As whole and as healthy as one can be. So, in any kind of relationship, I would think of, you want to be heard rather than be advised and be brushed aside. So when there is communication where you are being heard, where you are being acknowledged, when you're very validated, that's important. Also, you want to find people in any kind of relationship where there's balance and people are not rigidly fixated on a specific issues. If they are, it's important to understand the history of their firmness, on their rigidness on a particular issue. In also being healthy requires a person to have the ability to do give and take in relationships, not just fixated on having their own way, but be able to have a lot of give and take, a lot of understanding. A person who can hear and understand your point rather than just very fixated on having their own points made, their own decisions supported. So there are multiple factors, and also how they handle financially, their financial situation, how they deal with issues outside of the relationship. Because how they deal with the issues outside of the relationship will tell you how they deal with issues in the relationship. How they relate to their parents is also a good gauge for gauging somebody's emotional wholeness. So you want to understand and look at them from a distance and see how they deal with people, because in doing so, it will tell you how they deal with you. And if the person is has previous relationships, you want to see how they deal with their ex, because that will also tell you how they will deal with you. All right. There's another question. How do you build healthy communication with a parent who constantly disrespects your boundaries? That is a great question. To answer this question, I would like to ask, what are you doing to respect your own boundaries? And how are you setting yourself up so that your boundaries are respected by you? Because many times we expect people to respect our boundaries, to honor it. But if you yourself don't respect it and you don't walk away, you keep going to the same lion's den. So you may be setting yourself up. If they don't respect you and you keep repeating the obligation, then they go, okay, she doesn't mean what she says, he doesn't mean what he says. So then they'll keep breaking down your walls. So for you to have boundaries respected, you need to do what you say you're going to do rather than make empty threats, empty promises, empty whatever, because people know that your words have little weight. So you have to first decide as to how you want to show up and respect yourself, honor yourself. Okay, Brittany has another question. What are the earliest signs of emotional disconnection at home that people often miss or normalize? I, if you're working with a child, they hide in their room a lot. They don't come down to engage. They don't come out to engage. If you're finding, if you're talking about an adult, emotional disconnection may be giving you very short, brief answers. They don't take time to initiate. And it's the same thing with teens, children. They give you very brief answers because they don't want to open up, because they fear that if they open up, they will be nagged at, they will be judged, they will be criticized, they will be complained about. So then they protect themselves by giving you very short, brief answers so that you don't understand or you don't get into their intimate space. So many times, also with adults, the early signs of disconnection is when they spend less time at home and more time outside. It could be used like the excuse used could be a work excuse, going out with their friends excuse, spending more time outside with other people. So in a relationship, it's important to find time to connect, to do things together rather than just do things with other couples or with their children all the time. So make it a point in any relationship to do things just as a couple without distractions. And it doesn't have to be expensive. It can be very simple things like just going out for ice cream, just going to sit in the park where it's just two of you, where you have conversations, where you get to know the other person and their world and what's going on in their world. Many times couples get busy, bogged down with children, with work, with chores, with logistical issues, with games, that the relationship is the last thing they think about. When it's the last thing they think about, that means over time, when it's the last thing you think about, the relationship would have frayed. And that's how marriages break down, because you don't have off connection time, and with little connection time comes the disconnection. All right, folks, thank you for these great questions. Tonight is our last live stream, and I am grateful for your support, for your participation. And at this point, I am going to take a break from these live stream, and I hope that at some future point I will be able to do it again. But grateful for all your support and grateful for Laurel Ridge for sponsoring this program. I am going to end with two quotes. True connection begins when judgment ends. True connection begins when judgment ends. Let there be spaces in your togetherness by Khalid Gibran. Let there be spaces in your togetherness. Grateful for all that you have done to be here at this in this on this Thursday evening. I want to thank Laurel Ridge again for supporting this program. Laurel Ridge offers personalized treatment for all populations, and the variety of services for children, adolescents, adults, military dependents, active duty service members, and first responders. Do call 210-491-3591. Have a wonderful evening and hope to see you again soon.